So, what if a kingdom's greatest threat actually became its only savior? I mean, picture this. You're born under astrological signs so incredibly inauspicious that your own family is utterly convinced your mere existence is going to spell absolute doom for the entire realm. You're literally hidden away as a toddler, deemed a cursed child. But then, against literally all odds, you grow up to single-handedly rescue that collapsing kingdom through just sheer, terrifying willpower. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a story that is absolutely going to upend how you think about historical destiny. All right, let's dive right into this. We are looking at the spectacular and frankly kind of intimidating life of Raja Ramavarma IX, though history universally knows him as Sakthan Thampuran. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by seemingly impossible pressures, well, you're about to get a total masterclass in strategy, absolute centralization, and bold, unflinching execution. This guy took a fractured, decaying state that was literally teetering on the brink of total collapse, and he engineered what we now celebrate as the Kingdom of Cochin's golden era. But spoiler alert, he definitely didn't do it with gentle persuasion. He did it with an absolute iron fist.
So, here is our exact roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The cursed prince ascends. 2. Crushing the feudal order. 3. Outmaneuvering global empires. 4. Architect of modern Thrissur. 5. An autocrat's dark controversies. And finally, 6. Legacy and scholarly verdict. We're going to objectively balance his monumental architectural and cultural achievements with his pretty brutal autocracy.
All right, Section 1. The Cursed Prince Ascends. His start in life is it's really fascinating. He was born back in 1751, under the Puyam star on a new moon. Now, that specific astrological combination was deemed so volatile, so bad, that the palace astrologers basically declared him a living omen of disaster. Just 3 years later, in 1754, tragedy strikes, and his mother Ambika passes away. So he ends up being raised in this highly politically charged royal household by his maternal aunt, Chittama, and she clearly saw something in him. She recognized this innate, fierce spirit and gave him the pet name Sakthan, which literally translates to the powerful. And honestly, she hit the nail on the head. Because by 1769, at the remarkably young age of just 18, his political genius was so incredibly apparent that he stepped up and assumed de facto control of the entire state's affairs. Moving on to Section 2, Crushing the Feudal Order. So 18 years old, right? And he inherits an absolute geopolitical nightmare. It's like a giant puzzle where all the pieces are actively trying to destroy each other. His fractured realm was being squeezed from all sides. You had the Zamorin, a really fierce rival ruler to the north, Mysore pushing in from the east, the waning Dutch forces on the coast. But the worst threat? That was the internal feudal rot. The local feudal lords, specifically these autonomous Nair chieftains, were basically operating parallel governments. They were continually undermining royal authority. Think of it like modern megacorporations holding way more power than the actual government. It was completely unsustainable. So what does he do? He institutes a super aggressive, no-mercy centralization policy. He systematically stripped power from these chieftains, forcibly took back their lands, and transferred that authority straight to government officials that he personally appointed. He basically took a chaotic web of competing loyalties and replaced it with the singular, impartial order of the state. And you really have to look at how he dealt with the spiritual elites, because this was a total game changer. He didn't just stop at taking secular land. No, he went ahead and actually abolished the Yogyatiripids. Now, these were the Nambudiri spiritual heads who for centuries had controlled the immense, staggering wealth and management of major religious institutions, places like the Vadakumnathan and Peruvanam temples. By transferring all that massive wealth directly to the crown, he completely broke the back of the religious aristocracy. I mean, this was a wildly revolutionary move. It ensured that the monarchy was the one and only source of real power in the realm. Which brings us to Section 3, Outmaneuvering Global Empires. Okay, look at this diplomatic scorecard. Sakthan Thampuran wasn't just a brute. He was a master of pragmatic survivalism. He was constantly doing this really high-stakes tightrope walk between three massive global forces. Against Mysore and the highly formidable Tipu Sultan, he used delay tactics and secret alliances. He basically stalled a direct invasion while simultaneously and very covertly helping to fortify defenses against them. Then you have his traditional allies, the Dutch. They were rapidly losing their global grip. His strategy there? Pragmatic distancing. He essentially left them on reed when the British finally came in to oust them. He just didn't get involved. And finally, with the British East India Company, he secured a highly calculated tactical alliance. So let's unpack the actual mechanics of that alliance, which materialized as the Pawnee Treaty of 1791. Realizing that Mysore's threat was escalating fast, Saxton pivoted sharply. He calculatedly submitted to becoming a tributary to the British East India Company. He agreed to this escalating yearly payment that eventually capped out at 100,000 rupees. Now, in exchange, the British provided military protection to help reclaim usurped territories. But here is the absolute genius of it. While he was paying them, he negotiated complete, uncontrolled authority over his own internal affairs. Do you see what he did there? He effectively traded financial tribute for absolute domestic security. He basically rented an imperial army while maintaining total 100% domestic sovereignty. It was a brilliant move.
All right, Section 4, Architect of Modern Thrissur.
His urban vision was just as massive as his political one. Driven by pure strategy, he decided to relocate the royal capital from Thrissur to Thrissur. And to make this happen, he performed an act of seriously aggressive urbanism. He boldly ordered the clearing of 60 acres of dense, sacred teak forest that surrounded the Vadakumnathan temple. Just try to picture that for a second. Imagine the visceral, booming, chaotic scene of this ancient forest being entirely chopped down just to create this massive open space, the Tekyan Kadu Maidan. And encircling that, he laid out this circular Swaraj round. He literally created the foundational infrastructure, the beating heart of the city that is actually still in use today.
But, a city needs a soul, right? It can't just be roads and clearings. To unify his people, he used some brilliant social engineering. He took the city's temples and divided them into two fiercely competitive yet perfectly unified blocks. You had the western group, which was led by Thiruvambadi, going up against the eastern group, led by Paramekkavu. And this exact division is what birthed the absolute mother of all festivals, the Thrissur Puram, back in 1797. The origin story here is just incredible. It actually started as this defiant, mass alternative because local temples were unjustly denied entry to a prestigious rival festival, the Arta Puja Puram, all because of a weather delay. But instead of pleading with them or backing down, Sakthan Thampuran engineered a massive spectacle right in his newly cleared Tekkan Maidan. He took the celebrations out of these exclusive priest-controlled circles and handed the festival directly to the common citizenry. And in doing so, he forever cemented Thrissur as Kerala's undisputed cultural capital.
Now we have to get into Section 5, an autocrat's dark controversies. Because we really can't ignore this part. His moniker, the Powerful, was definitely earned through iron and stone. His governance style was completely defined by a strict, absolutely no mercy approach to justice. The literal edge of his sword brought an unprecedented level of internal security. He did protect the poor from bandits for sure, but that safety was enforced by a terrifying, draconian legal system. We're talking about a ruler who heavily preferred the weight of a gun and a sword over the softness of silk.
Let's actually look at the stark facts of his controversies. On one hand, he benevolently invited Syrian Christian merchants to Thrissur to boost local commerce. But on the other hand, he ruthlessly extorted massive wealth from Latin Christians and Konkanis just to fund his British tributes. This targeted persecution actually led to a near-war clash with the Dutch over at the Matancherry Palace. Furthermore, his justice system regularly utilized capital punishment and even physical mutilation for incredibly minor infractions. You did not want to step out of line. And his personal life? Equally turbulent. It was marked by severe estrangement from his first wife, and later a highly controversial marriage to a 17-year-old musician and dancer when he was 52 years old.
Section 6, Legacy and Scholarly Verdict. When you look at the historical consensus today, it's really fascinating. Modern scholars almost universally agree that without Sakthan's iron-fisted centralization, the Kingdom of Cochin would have simply ceased to exist. It would have been entirely absorbed by Mysore, or it would have just completely collapsed under its own internal feudal rot. Because of this, historians frequently compare him to Travancore's legendary Marthandavarma. They view his brutality, as harsh as it was, as the cold, absolutely necessary cost of a kingdom's survival. Ultimately, he left behind a massive structural overhaul. He built the 5 pillars of a golden era, effectively bridging the immense gap between medieval decay and colonial era resilience. He didn't just rule a kingdom. He completely, fundamentally re-engineered the political, administrative, and cultural landscape of the entire region. So, to summarize everything we've covered, here is what you really should take away from this explainer. This is the 5-point legacy of an incredibly complex man. Number 1, he was a strict administrator who centralized absolute power and crushed feudalism. 2, a strategic diplomat who brilliantly played massive global empires against each other. 3, a cultural founder who gave the people the magnificent Thrissur Puram. 4, a visionary city architect who literally carved modern Thrissur out of a dense forest. And 5, an economic reformer who built the necessary infrastructure to heavily boost maritime commerce. Out of pure chaos, he architected an absolute golden era. Which leaves us with one really lingering, provocative thought to chew on. We've seen the sheer brilliance, the undeniable cultural legacy, and the heavy, brutal hand that forced all of it into existence. Sakthan Thampuran absolutely saved his kingdom from total erasure, but he did it through fear, through extortion, and through absolute autocracy. So, does the survival of a nation actually justify the ruthlessness of its savior? Think about that moral cost of greatness. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep exploring the complex figures of our past.